Hello, I'm Dan Lorman. I'm the Chief Security Officer and Chief Strategist at Security Mentor Incorporated. I'm also the former CSO and CTO for the state of Michigan. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Tony Pepper, who is the CEO of Egress Software Technologies, a leading organization that specializes in human layer email security. This is a new and aggressively emerging category in the email security space. Tony, it's great to talk to you today. I want to start off with this first question. How do you define human layer security, and what problems are you trying to solve?
Yeah, it's great to talk to you, Dan. So this is a really, really interesting space that we find ourselves. Human layer security is a new category of product. And the reason for that is because old ways of solving real complex problems just aren't working. And what we're finding is that typical ways that an employee in a business might put that business at risk by maybe sending information to the wrong person, or maybe not applying the right level of security to information, just aren't working, and businesses are still at risk. So we looked at that space and thought, well, the only way to solve this is, first of all, using the latest in technology. So we've built a machine learning capability that really looks at user behavior and understands what normal might actually look like. And it uses that normal behavior and actually therefore looks for anomalies, and anything that looks abnormal, it's able to surface up and say, this feels different, this feels like a mistake, and then apply policy. And that could be policy around just a genuine mistake, or maybe something a bit more sinister. And I think the reason why this whole space is so hot right now is because 5 or 10 years ago, the technology simply wasn't available to kind of do these kind of things. So it really feels like there's a new space emerging and a new way to tackle a quite serious problem for the industry.
That's great, Tony. So why do traditional cybersecurity solutions fail to solve these problems?
Well, it's one of the reasons that legacy technology businesses just can't solve this problem is because they're built on static rules, and they really can't comprehend how complex this issue really is for businesses. So let me give you an example. Many businesses think that DLP will solve this problem of the misdirected email, but it can't, because ultimately DLP is based on the premise of, if a set of rules are broken, then either allow information to go out or prevent information to go out. But we all know that it's much more complicated than that. We all know that there's a situation whereby a person sending information to a specific individual, that's much more complicated. And it's for that reason that DLP fails. And because DLP fails, what we're finding is misdirected emails, people sending information to recipients accidentally to the wrong person. They're going under the wire, Dan. They're not getting detected by your classic kind of corporate mail infrastructure. As a result, the only way to tackle that is with a completely new way of solving the problem. And that's two things. That's combining machine learning and DLP to really understand the context when people are sharing information internally or externally.
What stories or case studies show the real value of human layer security for enterprises?
I kind of alluded to earlier that I think one of the quite concerning elements of this whole space is, because technology traditionally hasn't been able to solve this problem, a lot of errors that take place in business are just going under the radar. And actually, corporate businesses are relying on employees to self-report when they make a mistake. And if you think about it, it's quite obvious, right? If I don't know that I've made a mistake, if I'm not aware that I've made a mistake and sent something to the wrong person, how am I going to know to report? So that's one of the first reasons why the number of actual incidents that are recorded across the enterprise are way lower than the reality. I think the second thing that's really interesting in a lot of our research is that people are quite frightened to actually self-report if they make a mistake, because regulatory compliance around mishandling sensitive data is quite a serious issue now. So the combination of people not self-reporting because they're worried about the consequences, or just simply not knowing they've made a mistake to report, that has created a situation whereby when we go into businesses and say, how much of an issue do you believe this is? What's really quite concerning is the number of incidents are way lower than the actual facts. So when we go into businesses and place our technology in there that can actually detect these and proactively stop information from being sent to the wrong recipient, what we're finding is that the reality is it's in some instances 10 to 15 times worse, but one particular instance, it was 50 times worse than they actually thought. So that's the first point. This problem is really the tip of the iceberg, and enterprises globally simply have not got a handle on how big an issue it is. That's the first point. I think the second point is how when we put our technology in and it's tested by enterprises globally, currently we are detecting 98% of incidents that are genuine mistakes or potentially malicious activity. So what in effect we're doing is the problem's much bigger, and over 98% detection rate means that you can eliminate almost your risk to a point where the issues that you will be experienced today can be a distant memory with tools like our platform.
Tony, I'm in the security awareness training space, and so I'm very curious, how does human layer security complement training and awareness programs?
They're very complementary, right, Dan? As you know, that I think training and awareness programs are a really important part of creating a benchmark for all employees to be able to rise and achieve. I think it's critical that technology in human layer security space dovetails with existing training and awareness programs that are in place today. I think what's also really important, though, that one doesn't replace the other, one complements the other. I think the important point for me around using technology in the human layer space is we feel that people need a proactive piece of technology that constantly reinforces and wraps around daily activity for people. And that helps people avoid making mistakes or maybe clicking on links that they shouldn't constantly. And therefore it's our belief that if we can create tools that end user employees can really end up trusting as part of their day-to-day world, that actually that's a neat way of complementing those really important overarching trainers and awareness programs that are already in place in the business.
And these are fascinating developments. Where do you see this technology heading? Where are we going next?
The reason we chose to adopt this for mail initially is because when we looked at where the threats really take place, when we looked at where the risks really lie, mail is really the number one conduit for risk. You know, it because we use email on a day-to-day basis to communicate internally or externally. We literally send thousands of email messages, per month, per year. It's the obvious place to start, but it is only a starting point, right? There are many other ways to communicate internally or externally with suppliers or with partners. So we feel that mail's the obvious starting point, but where do we take this? So there's really two areas, really. The first is, what other channels can we apply this to? And there's a couple of obvious ones, right, Dan? So, there's popular use cases for file sharing and collaboration tools that we can apply this to. So that's, I think, probably one of the most logical next places that we might take a look at. But there's also other mechanisms as well. So I think we've seen a massive uptake on messaging capability, whether that be through Teams, which we've seen an enormous uptake, or Slack. I think there's other mediums that we could explore. So I think the first point is, what other mechanisms can we apply human layer security to that helps users avoid mistakes or aren't taken advantage of for malicious activity? I think the second point is, what else can we do using machine learning? What other use cases can we pluck out? At the moment, we're focused entirely around risk. So obviously we're talking about risk of loss or risk of mistakes. But ultimately, if we can look at human behavior and we can start detecting anomalies in that behavior, that opens up a whole new use case of areas that I think we could also explore that can help businesses make employees more productive and more effective in their day-to-day work. So there's so many avenues that this can go.
Well, thank you, Tony. It's been very enlightening. Human-led security breaches are especially via email are going to become more and more of a challenge for security teams as we move forward. And it's great to see Egress moving as a leader in this space. For more information and more details about this interview, you can visit the link, which is on the bottom of your screen now. And again, thank you, Tony, for joining me in this interview.
Great to talk to you, Dan, as ever.